Welcome back to our second of three screencasts for Standard 13. This screencast is going to deal with women during these progressive reform movements, as well as with Jim Crow laws, Plessy versus Ferguson, and the birth of the NAACP during this whole progressive time period. So, straight into women in the reform movements. Basically, everything that we focused on so far has centered around what men have done. And with the exception of Ida Tarbell, she's a little bit of kind of the exception as far as the muckrakers go. But everything is centered around what have men done to push forward progressive reforms? Well, this is what the women do. Women are social change advocates, just like men are. They're involved in everything from the new temperance movement, which is the same as the old one, basically against alcohol, women's suffrage, sanitation, education, racial equality. Women are involved in all of them. The one example that we'll give outside of Ida Tarbell is Jane Addams. So first and foremost, Jane Addams is a part of a movement called the Settlement Houses movement. These houses do exactly what they say. They're going to settle immigrants and the urban poor into American society. So if you think about it, when new immigrants come from Lithuania, when they come from one of the German states, recently unified into Germany. When they come from Germany, when they come from Eastern Europe, Poland, Russia, any of those Slavic areas, they're going to have a couple of common struggles. They are not going to speak English, most likely. They're most likely going to be uneducated laborers, meaning they don't really have anything, no skill set to provide other than the fact that they can do manual labor. So they're going to struggle to speak English. They're not really going to have a trained skill set. And if you think about it as well, one of the first things you need when you get to a new country is a place to live. If you don't speak the language and it's difficult for you to find a job, you're not going to be able to find a place to live. So these settlement houses that are founded under Jane Addams, they're nicknamed Hull houses, and they're established to basically help poor people and immigrants gain an education, find a job, find a place to live, things like that. Jane Addams herself, during her course and time kind of founding these Hull houses and establishing them in different cities, eventually she's also going to start to advocate for issues like women's suffrage. She is a founding member of the NAACP with W.E.B. Du Bois, who we'll talk about here in a second. But her Hull houses, they attempt to help immigrants kind of transition into American society. Ida Tarbell, we've already talked about in a previous screencast. I'm not going to go back to her all over again, but just remember she writes the expose on John Rockefeller called The History of Standard Oil and basically talks about how horrible of a person he is. The Jim Crow laws, this is the racial equality part of the progressive era. So in order to tell this story, we need to back up. We need to back up all the way to the corrupt bargain in 1876 when Rutherford B. Hayes basically, I'm not going to say bribes, but offers kind of a corrupt little bargain, corrupt deal to the House of Representatives. Because if you remember, in the election for this presidency, there's a tie in the Electoral College. Well, as all of you remember, when there's a tie in the Electoral College, the election goes to the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives picks the president. Rutherford B. Hayes goes to all of these Southern representatives, these Southern Democrats, and he basically says, hey, I'll make you a deal. If you pick me to be the president, I'm a Republican. If you pick me to be the president, you Southern Democrats, I will withdraw federal troops from the American South. Basically, I will get rid of the U.S. Army that is enforcing the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment in the American South. I'll get rid of them. And then the Southern states can do as they will inside of their own states. These Southern Democrats jump at that chance. They pick Rutherford B. Hayes to be the next president of the United States, and when they do that, they pretty much end Reconstruction. When Reconstruction's over, these Southern states start to pass laws that are initially designed to separate whites and blacks in the political process. They're designed to stop African Americans from voting, from serving on juries, to holding office, and basically keep them out of the government sphere of society. That's the idea. Gradually, these ideas will extend beyond just government. They'll extend to every aspect of public life. So, for example, in Baltimore, Maryland, they actually pass a housing ordinance in 1910 that says if you're white, you can live on these blocks. If you're black, you can live on these blocks, and neither the between shall meet. It's the idea. Now, that's not until, again, 1910. Before that, you see segregation in everything from public parks and restrooms to public transit. There's white and black schools. You see examples here. There's also segregation in the U.S. Army. You can see this is the Department of the Army that puts this out. It's not until Harry Truman during World War II where you actually see a desegregation of the U.S. military. So up until that point, the Army still has white regiments and black regiments. They have the Tuskegee Airmen that are all black, because at this point the Air Force doesn't exist yet. It's the Army Air Corps. They have the Tuskegee Airmen, which are an all-black unit. So you see that even though the United States is inching closer into the 20th century, it's still very, very segregated. This time period is continually separating the races more and more. Now, this all comes to a head when an African American, Homer Plessy, decides to board a train in Louisiana. Now, according to the Car Acts in Louisiana, whites and blacks cannot ride on the same train cars at the same time. Homer Plessy is 1/8 black. He decides to challenge this law. He boards an all-white car. He refuses to leave. He is arrested, forcibly removed from the train. He sues the state of Louisiana. This winds its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court rules that just because train cars are separate does not mean they are not equal, and that it is not the federal government's job to tell states what they can and cannot do with regard to race inside of their own state. They claim that as long as these places are equal, it is not illegal for them to be separate. So basically what it does is legalize segregation in the American South. Let me say that one more time to be clear. Plessy versus Ferguson creates separate but equal as kind of a mantra for the South, and it legalizes segregation in the American South. Now, this is going to be in play all the way up until 1954 with Brown versus Board of Education, when the Supreme Court rules that it is illegal to segregate public schools and orders the integration of those schools. That's kind of the first blow to separate but equal. But up until that point, separate but equal is the operating norm in the American South, which brings us to the NAACP. So the National Association for the Advancement of Colored Peoples, this is an organization that's founded by W.E.B. Du Bois in 1909. Its goal is first and foremost to fight for racial equality throughout the United States. It directly challenges Plessy versus Ferguson. And through all of its protests and marches and boycotts and things like that, it wants to try to make sure that the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendments are protected for all people. Now remember, the 13th Amendment frees the slaves. The 14th Amendment makes those slaves citizens and protects them equally under the law. And then the 15th Amendment gives those former slaves the right to vote. The NAACP wants to make sure that those rights are protected inside of the United States for all people.